Hello and welcome to Tabletop Bob. My name is Bob. I'll be your holy God Emperor of mankind for tonight. And you all will be my countless billions that toil underneath me. What do you think? Sounds good? Awesome.
Yes.
Sounds great.
Yes.
We have a treat for you all tonight. If you are a fan of Warhammer 40K, like all of us are, or if you are a fan of RPGs and you watch this channel regularly, this is going to be, a legendary stream of epic proportions, because we are not only combining the awesomeness of the science fiction version of Warhammer 40K, but we're also playing an RPG where we're going to have people playing literal biogenetic engineered super soldiers, cutthroat, killing, what are you again, Andrew? Commissars of the
that's my
Imperial
plan.
Guard. Joey's going to be
Political
Joey,
officer.
and Dasha is going to be, well, I'm not sure if she knows what she's going to be, but we have Chris, Dasha, Joey, and Andrew here tonight. Welcome. This is Wrath and Glory RPG. I did a poll, everybody. We'll do some more introductions in a second, but I did a poll today on YouTube. I wanted to know what population of our viewers know anything about 40K. You know, we talked about it. I mean, Chris and I, lots of streams, we've talked about it. Andrew, when you were on regularly for Icewind Dale and some other games, we've mentioned 40K as our other hobby. It's our thing we do. But I was wondering what population actually watches, knows the thing is about 40K. And the evidence or the results were staggering. Barely any. I would say a what is it? 14%, I think, said they seem to know about it. One was I know a lot about it, and the other was for the Emperor. So those are the two options, and those got about 14%. The rest was I know a little bit and I know nothing. So that means 80-something% of people on our channel are going to experience Warhammer 40K for really the first time.
Wow.
So we have a responsibility to make sure that this is their best first experience. No pressure. So with that said, Dasha's going to tell us all about Warhammer. Go ahead.
So I'm an expert player, and I will no. I'm, along with most of the channel, a complete newbie. So we'll see how this goes.
I mean, yes, you're a complete newbie, but you have immersed yourself in this wonderful book. Look at this.
I've done my best.
It's a work of art, honestly. If you haven't checked it out, Cubicle 7 is the publisher of this. It's called Warhammer 40K Wrath and Glory. They actually make, if I'm not mistaken, they are the publisher of the 2 Warhammer 40K RPGs that are still in print today. This one came out in 2019 or 20, I forget the date, but it came out recently, right before COVID. And then more recently, this past year, they came out with another game called Imperium Maledictum, which is kind of like the foil to this, whereas you're playing pretty much what you would imagine in 40K, Space Marines, Inquisitors, all the way down to lowly guardsmen. The Imperium Maledictum is an alternative game where you're kind of playing the street level kind of characters, but they're really cool. And Cubicle 7, actually, this is a channel first, I think, sent me digital copies of the rule books we've been using and some of the products that I'm going to actually be using to run our game. So thank you, Cubicle 7. I put a link down for them in the description. It's weird. I didn't really want anything from them, but I reached out to them. I just said, hey, I'm going to be running the stream. Is there any advice? And they said, yeah, here, take some stuff. So it helped us all out. We all got the product, and we appreciate it. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the characters or the players that are going to be here. So Dasha just introduced herself. You're new to the game, Dasha, but we're going to go around the horn here, and I think I am going to start with you. Your question is going to be slightly different, though, than the rest of them. For the rest of you, I want to know what your earlier experiences are with Warhammer 40K. What kind of got you into the game? What was your first take on it? Were you hooked immediately? Tell me everything about that first experience with 40K. And Dasha, because you don't have an experience with the tabletop game 40K, I kind of want you to tell me your first impressions of the universe that we have now just scratched the surface of. All right? And tell us who you are also. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So hi, I'm Dasha. I've been on the channel before in a few other longer campaigns as well as one-shots. As I said, this is my first time really getting immersed in any 40K anything, including like actual play, role play. Um, just off the bat, it's obviously very dark, very grim, very gritty. I think when Bob first called me and asked if I wanted to participate in this, that's kind of what he described it as. And from reading the guidebook, that's definitely what I've gotten. But a lot of nuance, I think, in the characters. I'm excited to see what everyone's characters end up as. I have no idea how this is going to go, but it's a fun kind of darkness that I'm excited to continue immersing myself into over the next few weeks.
Yeah, Dasha, and it's exactly what is the. I mean, the people do describe it as literally grimdark. That's like it's kind of its
Mm-hmm.
tagline that it is very. It's the worst possible like universe to be in. There's
Mm-hmm.
no way. Like, there's so many people who would be like, "Oh, I'd love to travel. I'd love if I could. I'd just be in Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that." This is not even. You would never, in your worst nightmare, want to be a citizen in this universe. It's just
Yeah.
horrifying, right? That's the basic premise of this game. I have a quote here. It's actually I'm really happy they did this because it's 40K. So in the book inside cover, I'm going to read this last tagline here. It's a very famous one. Andrew, I'm sure, Chris and Joey
I
will know this.
I should go and get my original Rogue Trader. It's just downstairs.
Why haven't you brought it? That's what I need to know, Andrew. I've never seen a copy in real life, by the way.
I'm gonna get one
All right,
real
Andrew's
quick.
gonna go read. Is gonna get this, but I gotta read this last line. This kind of sums everything up. It's a dark and terrible era where you will find little comfort of hope. Forget the power of technology and science. Forget the promise of progress and advancement. Forget any notion of common humanity or compassion. There is no peace amongst the stars, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And that really is the tagline of Warhammer 40K. It epitomizes the entire setting, and that is where our story will take place.
I have to
So
say, as so in my real life, I'm a social studies teacher and I teach one of my classes government. And I really appreciate all of the historical and government kind of references that I'm seeing, or the little callbacks to different civilizations. I just
mostly
had
fascist governments.
mostly fascist, yeah, but I just had my students do a project where they're supposed to create their own government, and it should be like the best form of government they could think of. And to me, this is like a compilation of like all the worst for like the worst form of theocracy, the worst form of dictatorship.
Well, that's exactly
Yeah,
right. If you
exactly,
combine communism with Nazism and then throw in
exactly,
religious fundamentalism as well, then you're starting to get there.
Yeah,
exactly.
you're
I'm
starting.
enjoying that like historical government nuance, all these callbacks. So
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, you when you actually play the game too, and if you were to play with the models, you definitely see the influence of like World War II and all the other historical. I think like I said, references to the game. A lot of Space Marines, especially, go even. They have a lot of references to like ancient Rome, ancient Greece. So it's a very they steal from everything in the setting. Yeah. Okay, so Dasha, you told us your thoughts. It's going to be great. Now, for the rest of you, I want to know about how you got into this game. Andrew, since you brought Rogue Trader, why don't you tell us? Look at that. Beautiful. Hold that up a little higher.
Ooh,
There
so
it
that's a
is.
classic.
Okay, so I was a happy-go-lucky 12-year-old, like kittens and puppies. And then I happened into a Games Workshop store in Coventry, um, which is a
This
town
is
close to
England, of
me.
course, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's quite apt because Coventry used to be a beautiful medieval town, but it was firebombed by the Nazis in the Second World War. My grandparents actually watched it burn down over the horizon from where their farm was. But
Wow.
anyway, they have like a cool bombed out cathedral and stuff. Anyway, so I went to Coventry, I went to a Games Workshop store and I played Warhammer and I was totally hooked from the start. And I brought my own little RBT 301 or whatever, the very own Space Marine sets. And then no one else played it or anything. So for 6 months, I didn't do anything. But then my sister's boyfriend, my sister's 9 years older than me, and she was at university, and he was into it, and he lent me this book as like when I was like 12, and I read the book, got totally hooked on it, and then somebody moved into my area from another town in my school, and he was into it as well. So a bunch of us got more and more into it. So I've been doing this game for like 30 years.
Wow. Yeah, probably. I know Joey's story, so we'll go
It's
to Joey in a second. But I think that might be the longest out of all of us.
But I do want to say yeah, this is like a pre internet time for the most
Yeah.
part. Like so like finding it through a book. Like how else would you have found it?
well,
Like
I went into
now
it.
that I think
Used
about
to
it.
get into it. Used to go to the stores. You see, they used to have stores in the major towns, and you would go in and they would play a game with you and tell
Yeah.
you about it.
Yeah, for
It
those
was
who don't
like,
know, the game is based in England, right? The company Games Workshop that created
right,
40K
exactly.
and all the other games that they make, that they're from England. So I feel
It's
like
kind
you
of like
couldn't.
Scientology. You go and they like give you a stress test, and then
Yes. No, actually.
yeah,
You were in the heartland.
It's weird how cultish the Games Workshop stores were.
hmm
Like
Yeah,
like they would get mad at
Coincidence? I think not.
You're 100% right, Joey, because
Selfish.
we had the one here in the Palisades Mall. I remember it
and they
was
would
like
kick you out if you weren't using official models.
that, but also like you had to like play by their rules, and like they only had a couple, one, two tables maybe, right? It was like you're waiting to play sometimes. Weird. And then you know, I feel like just like any game, any hobby shop or community, it ends up feeling almost like a what's the word, like the old kung fu movies, like you go to your dojo to the next and challenge the
Yeah.
people there. It was what it felt like back in the day,
Except this
pre-internet.
was like the McDonald's of dojos. Like, it was, like if no dojo actually had any specific unique community.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, the McDonald's of Mickey D's. All right, so
it's
Andrew, you grew up, and was it Rogue Trader, the first edition?
so when I started, it was Rogue Trader. Pretty soon, it was second edition,
Okay, yeah,
which
yeah.
was Rogue Trader was basically a role-playing game with models, and in like 92 or something, maybe 90, 92, 93, 94, they came out with second edition, which was actually what it is now. It's like a tabletop
Yeah,
war
true.
game where you paint and assemble the models.
Yeah, true war
On a,
game. Yeah,
and it was still very role play. Like each movement there was fewer models, and it's got much larger, much more. You need many more models, and it's less true to life really. Whereas back in the day, you used to have a lot more characteristics, and it used to be much more like a role playing game.
yeah. The game has definitely
It's
evolved. We are obviously in 10th edition now.
yeah. The
So
idea was basically people like fantasy, people like Lord of the Rings, and they had this idea of, well, people like space and people like fantasy. Why not put fantasy in space? So initially, all the races were just fantasy races, and they threw in space and made up some reason why they would be there. Like you have elves and dwarfs and humans. Space Marines are basically knights. Necrons, they're basically like the
undead.
Walking Dead kind of
Yeah.
Egyptian
Mhm.
kind of people. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, like a lot of these fantasy elements, and I'm not sure how much you read about this, Dasha, but there's races like the Eldari or Eldar, as most people like to call them, and they're basically space elves, right? They live on these craft worlds, giant worlds that move around. There's the dark version of them, right? The Dark Eldar or Drukhari now they're called, trademark, you know, whatever. But anyway, so all these things existed in the fantasy version, and they kind of ported them over to the sci-fi version, which is Warhammer 40K.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fantasy tie-ins too. Now, Chris, I know you've been playing quite some time. I think I've known you now. I got to know you through 40K. We met when I was like 18 years old. Maybe, yeah, 18. Yeah, I think it was 18. And
Somewhere around there.
how long were you playing before? I mean, I don't know what your first experience was like.
40K since 2006.
Oh,
That's
so you
when-
started playing. Oh, so I was playing longer than you. Okay.
Yeah, I had gone over to our buddy Fritz's house to play Dungeons and Dragons, and while I was waiting for the other guys to show up, he pulled out these miniatures, and he's like, "Dude, check this out!" And I was like, because like I remembered them from when I was a young kid, and I saw that Rogue Trader book, and like there was like this epic picture of like a huge battle of Marines, and like in the forefront there's there's like
Yep.
a medic, an apothecary. He's white, and I remember somewhere in one of these pictures, I remember seeing these pictures and just being like, oh, the beaky nose and all that. but just not being able to afford anything because I was dirt poor. And anyway, so then when he showed me these pictures, these memories came streaming back. I mean, the miniatures. So then I was like, okay. So then on the way home, I stopped at the store and I bought a combat squad of Marines, and then the rest is history. Here, I started painting them. I was terrible at it, and then being an artist and an art teacher, I just kind of figured it out and started posting stuff on YouTube, and all of a sudden it exploded.
Yeah.
One of my favorite all-time videos on YouTube is my friend Joey here at one of the tournaments, him versus Fritz.
Oh yeah.
I'll have to link that up at some point. Oh, it's wonderful. It's just great.
You could obviously check out Chris's channel. It is
okay.
Chris's channel, Jawa Balls. But
that
Chris,
that game haunts my memories.
Yeah.
I want to see this video.
so Chris and our
I'll
friend
link it
Fritz, who has been on the channel, he played in Keep on the Borderlands with Chris. The two of them, honestly, you guys were like one of the first 40K YouTubers. Like there wasn't really a space for that type of content, and you and Fritz started putting out videos of like battle reps and just like painting videos, and it kind of took off, and it was like you were local celebrities.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun for a while. I would travel the country and go to conventions and like sign autographs and stuff. It was very head inflating.
Yeah. Now,
But
now of course everybody takes breaks from the game, but I think you're coming back to the game now, right?
trying to, it's just trying to find time. Things happen, and I fell away from the game for several years, and trying to get back in. But whatever. But I remember as a young guy playing like the role playing games. Games Workshop stuff was always like the top tier quality. The books were just beautiful. They were works of art. Warhammer Fantasy was one of them. So like I like seeing this new book because it is a work of art. This role playing book. It's a beautiful book, and so I just wanted to mention that the sheer quality of their work has always been kind of top notch.
Yeah, and even though this is another company that produced it, Cubicle 7, I mean, Games Workshop, they don't really give out, I feel like, their IP like that easily, right? Like when Fantasy Flight Games had their stuff, they produced some awesome board games. There's so many, I feel like, instances where like a Warhammer product went to somebody else and it just was awesome. Like it's rare. They don't do it too often, but when they do, they kind of strike it rich, I feel like, with it. Yeah, and obviously the models, I know we were just talking about off stream, but like I have some of my models behind me here. I try to represent pretty well. I feel like one thing too, Andrew and Chris, we got to talk about the armies you play, because I brought a variety here. I brought Gilliman. I also brought our everyone's favorite Saint Celestine.
The Blessed.
And then to represent the Chaos side, I brought good old Be'lakor, the greater the demon prince, really.
Well, that's the new version.
Yes, the new version. The older one's a little. He's like a nugget. He's like a little nugget. He's not nearly as cool as this model. But tell us the armies you play. Andrew, what do you play? You play variety.
So, obviously, I've been playing a long time. Everyone's first army was Space Marines, so that doesn't really count.
Not me.
My first army that I actually chose... Oh, all right. Well, the first army that I really liked was Imperial Guard. They're now called Astra Militarum because everything has to have a cool Latin name nowadays. But Imperial Guard are basically... So you have this world, which is basically all the tropes of horror shoved in a setting. And then you have these guys who are just regular humans. They're just regular humans. They're dragged from their world. They're sent all around. They don't know what they're doing. They have like a laser gun. It's called a las gun, which is the weakest weapon in the entire game. So I kind of like playing them. You line them up in firing lines like Napoleon, and you just shoot at whatever horrible thing comes towards you.
And I'm going to preview the book here, Andrew. I'm going to preview the book here. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm going to show everybody what you're talking about. So these are the Imperial Guard. They are just humans fighting against awful, god-awful things. So there's definitely a romanticism about the Imperial Guard for sure.
But
go ahead.
I could go through everyone I've played.
Well, what other armies do you have?
Well, what other ones do I really like? So I played orcs for an awful long time, and orcs are ORK, not ORC.
Right.
So they're totally different from the fantasy orcs. But they're basically orcs from fantasy combined with 1980s British football hooligans that used to go and watch soccer games merely so they could throw things at each other and beat people up and shout at each other.
I mean, their
they were
sergeants.
a big thing.
Their sergeants are called knobs, literally.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
They were a big thing when this game was created, and they're kind of the leftover race. There was this really intelligent alien race that created them to protect them. So they created kind of the ultimate soldier that would grow from nothing and be around. And this intelligent race has just disappeared or devolved. And now you have this race of kind of violent monsters that replicate via spores, and they kind of grow in the ground and pop out of the ground. And they're green, but they have red blood because red blood looks cooler. I mean, you can imagine. And the cool thing about them is their kind of occupation is just like predetermined. So some of them grow up and they're like really like engineering, and some of them grow up and they're kind of medics. But they do everything with great enthusiasm, but not very successfully. And the only reason anything works in their society is because they have a psychic power in groups. And if they believe something is going to work, then it actually does work, even though it shouldn't, which is pretty cool. It's kind of a metaphor.
Joey and I had a long conversation recently about this.
Helpful philosophy for life.
Exactly. If you will it, it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
You also play Imperial Fists, Space Marines.
Space Marines, Imperial Fists.
Those are the yellow Space Marines. We'll talk more about Space Marines when we actually dive into the archetypes, because I think Chris is dead set on playing one. And then you also
Space Elves. I have some second edition Genestealer Cult, which I love, but I don't play anymore.
Okay.
Which are kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers type trope.
Yep. And I forgot you had Eldar. Of course, you have Eldar too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have Slaaneshi. I have Slaaneshi Space Marines as well. A Slaaneshi cult.
Really? Oh my God, Andrew. There's so many things.
They're not really suitable to bring out to the club, so I don't bring them to the club.
Okay.
And they're not really PG-13. And my favorite one at the moment is Necrons. So imagine the Egyptians, and they wanted to live forever, and weird gods came and said, "Oh, you want to live forever? Why don't we can make that work?" And what they basically did is they put everyone in the race into a furnace that transferred them into a machine, and the machine would live forever. But what they didn't tell them is that during that transference, these gods that were doing it actually ate their soul. So they're a bunch of soulless machines that are now kind of grumpy about the fact that they don't have any souls. And after they became machines, they went to sleep for 10 gazillion years, and now they're come back to reclaim that old empire. They overtook and enslaved the gods, and that turned them into kind of soulless machines, and now they kind of have them in tortured shards of themselves, which they use as weapons. Yeah,
so Andrew has, and I love the Necrons too. They were my first army my first army. That was my first army. But we'll dive into more about the Xenos races when we get into the game. But there's so much to this. If you're watching right now and you're like, wow, my God, there's so much to know, don't worry about it. You don't need to know all that for the game. But if you were to go down the rabbit hole of 40K, there's a lot. There's 20-something armies to play, and it seems like Andrew's got a whole bunch of them. I didn't realize.
But you don't need to worry about it, because if you were in the 40K universe, you probably wouldn't know any of this. You'd just be some grunt making widgets all day in horrible conditions.
Chris, you're famous for the army you play. You want to talk about your army?
Yeah. So when I first started, I was actually doing Black Templars, and I painted a squad of Black Templars, and then I sprayed them with a varnish, a satin or a matte varnish, and it frosted, which means it turned white. So these black painted beautiful models turned white with this awful varnish. And there's a way to fix it now. Anyway, so I was so frustrated. I'm like, I'm done with those. I put them aside, and I started painting some other armies. And I looked around, and I found these red ones. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like red. That's my favorite color. And so they're called Blood Angels. And then the rest was history. So I started painting Blood Angels. I did a painting tutorial on how to paint them, because there was no tutorials on YouTube, and I put that up there.
Isn't that strange that there was a time where there was no painting tutorial for that. Because I feel like if you put in how to paint Blood Angels right now, you will have 1,000 videos.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There was nothing. So
Yeah.
I figured out how to paint them, and then I made a terrible video on how to do it and posted it on YouTube. And that video exploded and launched Jowl balls and turned me into like the Blood Angels expert. Really, like you couldn't Google the word like Blood Angels without finding like 5 Google pages of me and my content. It was a lot. And so like playing the Blood Angels for years, just winning tournaments I had no right to be winning with an army that only existed on a PDF.
I remember that. Yeah. Oh my god.
And just playing the Blood Angels.
Yeah, the game is so different. It's changed. It's morphed. But I think it's actually in a good spot right now. And Blood Angels are an iconic Space Marine faction. For those of you who are like, I've heard of Space Marines, this is probably what you know about Warhammer. There are so many other games like Dawn of War, the actual game Space Marine, and pretty much any computer game or video game of Warhammer that's been created. These are the main protagonists. They are the elite warriors of the Emperor of Mankind, who I mentioned at the beginning. The Emperor is basically a superhero. He's a near god, and he created these bioengineered super soldiers out of his genetic material. So they're almost like all his sons, basically.
But he's also a leech who requires 1,000 souls a day
Well,
to be fed into his
He
flesh.
does.
I mean,
We'll talk about that too, because that's going to be a big part of the even the game we're playing. So the Emperor, where he's at right now, and what's going on. So that's the Blood Angels and Chris, and now we'll get to Joey. I know it's been a while, Joey. We've been just going around the horn. We could talk forever, but you're last. Tell us your story about 40K.
So here I am, 13 years old. I am working a job at my parents' deli. I'm making some money. I could have saved this money for college. I could have saved money. I could have put this money away. And I could have been like $30,000 richer had I just like saved it somewhere, invested it. But no, my cousin had to introduce me to this insane enterprise.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Where I immediately fell in love. I was like, oh my god, there's little guys. We make little guys. We fight the little guys. I felt like a little general. I came up with little stories.
Yeah, all your guys had names and stuff. It was crazy.
And named them. I believe like my first army was orcs.
Yeah.
And I called one of them Rambork.
Joey was 13. It's okay, everybody. He was young.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
I love
It
that.
was so adorable.
Yeah.
Like I loved it. I really it's just this big giant sandbox for the imagination. And on top of that, it got to meet a bunch of really cool people.
Mm-hmm.
We got to always play at this comic book store, Comic Book Heaven. Got a shout out, Comic Book Heaven.
Definitely.
Where we met Bishop, who taught us like almost like everything we know about the world and all other sorts of like nerd stuff. And honestly, like I think what was the coolest part about the game was building like a community that you would see every week. Eventually, Bob, you worked at the Salvation Army for a little bit, and we played in like a church, which was probably the coolest setting to play Warhammer in.
And that's how our gaming club Battle for Salvation started. We've talked about it on the channel many times. Look at that. Chris has the first Battle for Salvation tournament trophy there. That is 16, 15 years old. What year was that?
2009.
2009. So that is
Wow.
14 years old. Yeah, sounds about right. Mm-hmm.
Junior year of high school.
Yeah, look at that bad boy.
Wow, look
Oh,
at that.
wow.
Yeah,
that
go
was-
ahead, Joe. Yeah, and talk about your armies too when you're done.
Yeah, like so yeah, I started with orcs. Like Andrew said, like there's just something very entertaining about like you're playing some guy who, he's got his space marines.
Yeah, he's so proud of
His
him. He's named them
noblest
all.
knights.
Yeah.
It's like he's named them all too. So they have like real serious names. There's a lot more effort put into
Lucia
it.
Stern.
And then to just come in with a bunch of like a horde of unpainted models.
Joey
And
was
just
known for running
demolish
the
this person.
and demolish it. Joey's known for running what was called the Gray Tide. We called it back then
Oh God.
because Joey did not paint his stuff. Although you got into painting a little later, I think, right? A little bit.
The one time I seriously painted, there was a Sanford and Son marathon on, and just for some reason, like my ADHD brain just let me sit there and paint while I was watching episode after episode of Sanford and Son. I think that was the most amount of models I ever painted, and it was like 30 models.
That was good. I remember it. You also had Chaos Space Marines, which are the
Chaos
kind of
Space
the
Marines.
yeah they're the antagonist, I guess, in a lot of ways to the 40K storyline. I have a picture of them right here. They're basically Space Marines who have turned traitor. It's a civil war between the two of them. It happened in the 10,000 years before the story actually takes place, or the main setting. It was called the Horus Heresy, where the Emperor's sons, led by Horus on the Chaos side, when his favorite son turned to the forces of Chaos, the demons of Chaos. And that's really the big overarching story that kind of really is at the center of 40K. There's tons of other stuff. There's orcs, there's Eldar, there's the Tyranids, who are maybe even the scariest threat right now, but really the central kind of, I think, problem is chaos and the battle of good and evil there. You had you played Chaos Space Marine for a long time.
Played Chaos Space Marines, played Space Wolves, played Tyranids, Tau.
That's right, yeah.
And Eldar, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And Dasha, what's your first army going to be?
No idea.
We'll see after this 4
I need to
episodes.
see to what
yeah.
extent I desire to be like sucked into this cult of Warhammer
No,
and
stay
how
away.
much time and effort and money I have. But we'll
Well,
see.
you know why it's called Warhammer 40,000? Because that's how much it costs
How
to
much?
start an army.
Yeah.
It's called 40K for a reason, everybody. Real quick, I've talked about my experiences with 40K, but I started when I was a senior in high school. I did, like I said, got Joey into it as well. I was actually looking for a game called HeroScape. If you don't know it, Google it. It's an awesome game. It's not HeroClix. Everybody's like, oh, HeroClix, I played that. No, HeroScape. You built these it wasn't like play school Legos. It was like a big, huge terrain. It would be like green grass, blue for the water, and it was just like blocks. And you'd put them all together, stack them all, and make a battlefield. And you had all this weird heroes from all over. It was cool. But I was looking for that. So I went to Comic Book Heaven, which was in our local shop in White Plains, New York here. I went in, and the guy, Bishop, who was the manager of the store, he was like, we don't have that. But he's like, we do have Warhammer. And I was like, what's Warhammer? He was like, it's right here. And there was a big store at the time. They had tables set up at all times. There was one particular cityscape one. You remember that one? It was all the buildings and ruins. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to play this. So naturally, when I played my demo game, I played Orcs, and it was horrible. I got destroyed. And I was
You
like,
always lose your demo game.
I was like, I'm never playing Orcs ever again.
Yeah, they always beat the kid in the demo game. It's like the law. Like you must kill the kid in 2 turns.
You have to. You have to teach them the hard way, right? And so
Right.
then I was looking at the wall, and I was like, oh yeah, these dudes, they look like Terminators, like Necrons. They look like Terminators, like literally like T-1000s. No, not 1000s. The Arnold Schwarzenegger ones, the T-100s, 200, whatever they're called, whatever. They're big metal skeletons, and they were awesome. They shoot this green energy out of their guns. It was incredible. So I was like, that's it. So I got that army at Necrons, and then it was snowballed. I got Joey into it, got all my other friends into it. Started running the gaming club at Battle for Salvation. It was just, we started running tournaments. We host I think, the best 40K tournament, without a doubt, in the Northeast. The best 40K tournament around. So, I'll leave a link down for Battle for Salvation in the description. I haven't done that, but I'll do that before we end here. But I played Necrons. I played Space Marines. The Ultramarines were my flavor. But right now, and it's kind of sad to say, I've fallen to Chaos. I play almost only Chaos armies now. Thousand Suns, Death Guard, Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Knights. It's really sad, Dasha. It's really...
I remember the day you first fell to Chaos. You brought in those Nurgle Marines.
I was like, yeah, I
They were
just got,
good.
oh, this is a
They were
starter
good
set.
at the game right now. And I was like,
They
oh
were
dear.
decent.
Sure. That's
Listen.
the
Poor,
reason.
poor Dash, she's like, what have I gotten myself into?
Instant regret.
Listen to these nerds.
No, this is great. I'm learning a lot.
we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this.
But is it good for you?
Is it good? So let's now cut the chatter. Let's get into the game. That's what you're all here for. I'll timestamp this down below so you can look and see if there's some part you want to look at in the character creation. But we're going to start with general overview of this game. Okay. So like I said, we would be. I'm going to put some music on as well because we need some music to listen to while we play this game, create these characters. I think I'm going to go with something. Dark Angel sounds good on tabletop audio. Let me know if the levels are good. This one tends to have, I think it'll be a little bit louder, so I'm putting it a little lower. You let me know if you can hear it and when you can hear it. It's going to come in. It's got a nice little beat going on. Let me know if you can hear it. So, Warhammer. As we mentioned before, we're playing Wrath and Glory. That's the name of this RPG, Warhammer 40k, Wrath and Glory. And it is a dice pool system. Okay, so what that means, and for those of you who haven't played anything outside of like D&D or Pathfinder like that, it's very similar to a lot of other games. I feel like Modifius is another company that does a dice pool system. We did Star Trek RPG here on the channel, and I got a lot of Star Trek Adventures vibes from this. Basically, the core mechanic of the game is to create a pool of dice. Now, we're not going to actually do a dice on Roll20. We're going to be rolling our dice on our tables. I know it's a little different for what we typically do here. I always like to show my dice rolls, but I'll be honest with you. I had a hard time with the character sheet that's created for Roll20. Those are always kind of hit or miss for the maybe non-D&D games. And I just maybe don't know how to use it so accurately. And then I feel like just rolling dice might not represent this well because you need to have what's called a wrath die in your pool. So whatever your dice pool is, you kind of look for an attribute and a skill, and you combine them together, whatever the numbers are, and you create a dice pool. There's actually a really great visual that I'm almost certain that I had flagged, and now I'm realizing is not here. But I'm going to find that, and I'm going to get that for you. But basically, the whole mechanic is just one single dice roll. Oh, here it is. Perfect. Let me bring this up so you can all see it. All right, so basically in this game, what you're doing is you're assembling a dice pool. You're trying to decide what you're going to do, just like in any other RPG. If you want to do something, your DM tells you what kind of skill is appropriate, what check you need to make, and then you create your dice pool. You assemble your attribute number and the skill number, and you add that together. So in this case, in the example here, the athletics is 2, strength is 3, means you have 5 dice. One of the dice, as in not an additional die, is the Wrath die, and it should be something different color or different size. I'm going to be using my cool Battle for Salvation dice when we play, but you can use anything, as long as it's very recognizable as a different die. You roll the dice. Results of a 1, 2, or 3 are failures; they do nothing. Results of a 4 and a 5 count as 1 success, and they call them icons. That doesn't really matter too much, but more on that later. And then a 6. Essentially a critical hit. It's considered to be an exalted icon, and that would count as 2 successes. So the target number is kind of up to the GM, but let's say a standard task was a task of 3. You'd roll your 5 dice, count up how many results you had. If you had a total of 3 total icons, you succeed. If you roll less than that, you fail. And then there could be complications and such. It all kind of depends on what the Wrath die is. If it's a 1, then the Wrath die is going to cause, it's going to be a problem. There's going to be a complication with it. And if it's a 6, well, then there's some good things that could happen for the group, including gaining more information, improving the quality of something you just did, increasing damage, increasing glory, which we'll talk about, and, kind of things like that. Basically, something it could be narrative or mechanical that gives you a bonus if that Wrath die was a 6. We'll talk more about combat and everything like that later, but that's the basic mechanic. It all is around this. A dice pool system. Does that make sense to everybody here, panel? Yeah? All right, good. And I think once we start playing, I feel like once we make like 2 or 3 dice checks, we're going to really understand it because it isn't that complicated. how you get all this and the way it's explained and maybe kind of complicated. I think character creation is probably the hardest thing to understand in this game. But once you have your character made, it's like smooth sailing after that. Any questions? Okay. All right, good. And then let's talk about the setting, because I think to make our characters, we have to know a little bit about what you're going to experience. There are plenty of modules out there. In fact, I got a bunch from Cubicle 7. I think they're really high quality. The only problem is that we really wanted to play, like Chris wants to play a Space Marine, right, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Joey, I don't know what you're going to play, but we toyed around maybe a Space Marine too. Andrew's going to be playing probably a Commissar, an Imperial Guard Commissar, and Dasha, I think we were settling in on the Sister of Battle. Seems
Yes.
right? So we have a couple of ideas for it, and you really need to be tier 3 for some of these. Basically, the way they do this system is in Warhammer, there are characters and models in the game that are just supposed to be so much better, right? Like a Space Marine is so much better than a lowly Imperial Guardsman. If they were to fight each other, it would be almost comical, right? It's not even possible for that to be a victory. So in the game, they play a system called the tier system. There are 5 tiers in total. 4 are in the main core rulebook that we're using. The tiers kind of go something like this, but basically humans and other like very low level grunts in the military, whatever faction it is, that would be tier 1. Tier 2 would be people who are a little bit more elevated. To give some examples of that, be like a Sister of Battle, a Space Marine Scout, which is like an initiate in the Space Marines. They don't really have their full complement of adaptations. They don't have all of the augmentations yet, and they're kind of learning to be a Space Marine. They don't have power armor, which is iconic. They don't have those things. And then finally get to tier 3, and that's where the heavy hitters start. You've got Space Marines, you've got Inquisitors, you've got Andrew's gonna be playing a Commissar, which is very high ranking Imperial Guardsman. And so what you do is you play in the system, and even if you wanted to play, let's say, a Guardsman, you would then have a lot more points to spend at character creation to make your Guardsman like a badass, basically. There are Guardsmen of legend, right? There's the Catachin Guardsman Marbo, who is like this one-man army, right, in the lore. And so that's how you'd get someone like that, a sergeant or even a commander, like Iron Hand Strachan, for instance, another Guard reference. But like these are just humans, but they have experience, they've gotten upgrades, augmentations, and they are now at a higher tier because of that. So basically that's how you'd compete. So even if you wanted to play a Guardsman, you could do that, but you'd be a super powered Guardsman. You'd be one of legend almost. And so we decided to play tier 3 so we can get some of these really big, heavy hitting characters out there. Any questions about that? All right, good. And if you have questions in the chat, just throw them into the YouTube chat, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Hopefully I can see them. If you can watch the chat too, everybody, that would be good. Now the next thing I want to talk about is what your characters will be doing, because I think that's going to set up the framework, and that's actually what they say to do at the beginning of character creation, is create what's called the framework. There are some actual mechanical things behind a framework, but we're really going to focus on the story side of it right now. So when you create a framework, it's kind of like why your group would kind of be together, why they would be going on whatever mission they would be going on, and in a longer campaign, it might be just very, very superficial. But since this is a one-shot, and like I said, we're going to be playing limited, we're going to be very specific about it. Now, I mentioned before, there are plenty of modules out there, and I usually run modules. I like running modules because I enjoy them. I think people come to see how they would play a thing, and that's might be some reason why they watch it. But for this one, I'm creating my own adventure, which is kind of cool. I have an idea, and one of the PDFs I got gave me a lot of ideas for something that I kind of floated in my head when I first got this, and then I realized, wow, there's rules for this, and I'm going to do it. So basically what's going to happen here is you are going to be tasked with recovering something from a Space Hulk. Does that make sense to everybody? Dasha, you know what that means, right?
Absolutely, I do. Yes, I'm an expert in Space Hulks, in fact.
Okay, good, excellent. For those of you at home who
But
may
for
not,
the audience, you should explain. I think.
I think so. I think it's probably good. So a Space Hulk in Warhammer is. I'm going to switch over to our PDF here.
Who's seen the film Event Horizon?
That's a great movie.
Event horizon is kind of the most pleasant part of a space hulk.
Basically, Dasha, it's a nightmare fueled,
he's not wrong.
nightmare fueled, just horrifying experience of space in its like the scariest aspects of space combined with aliens. It's just terrible. But basically, the Space Hulk is a floating either ship or it could be some other object, but a large object, something that will be floating through space, that something has happened to it and needs to be recovered, salvageable. Think of it almost like in naval terms, like a ship that has been lost at sea, right? And who knows what's happening? It's floating around and it needs to be salvaged, recovered. And in this case, there's going to be a Space Hulk that you need to recover something from. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I don't want to give story points away yet, but that's going to be the thing. And I have two ideas. I'm actually going to let you kind of talk about this and decide maybe after we make our characters or before. But the Patron, someone's hiring you. You see, in the system that this game takes place, the entire Wrath and Glory book is supposed to be designed to take place in the Gilead system. This is a system that I wasn't familiar with before reading this. I don't know if it's something they created or it's something, but I feel like in 40K there's always lore to draw from. But the Gilead system, for the last 3 years in the storyline, has been cut off from the rest of the galaxy. There's a area of space called the Great Rift where the warp, which is kind of like the way that people travel in most ways, like their way of hyperspace. You navigate through it with your ships. There has been a warp disturbance in the Great Rift, and it's cut off the Gilead system. There is no way to get into or out of the system for the last few years. And for those of you who remember, we talked about the Emperor. The Emperor is basically a rotting carcass. He's in like a coma-like state on this golden throne that keeps him alive on Earth. In the Horus Heresy, he was mortally wounded by his son Horus, and he's been there ever since. But he's still alive, barely clinging, right? But he's that powerful that his psychic energy is able to create what's called the Astronomicon. It's a beacon on Earth that permeates the warp, and people can actually use it like a North Star to navigate through the warp. Because the warp is not a good place, Dasha. The warp is not just like an in-between fabric of space. It's also where the gods of chaos reign. So they are demons, basically, are in the warp. So every time you go into the warp, you're kind of risking something. And even like psychers who use powers from the warp to, fight on the battlefield, every time they use a psychic power, there is a chance that something could go terribly wrong and a demon could like explode through their body. Like stuff like that can happen. So they're taking a great risk every time they use the power from the warp. So the Emperor is keeping the demons at bay as best he can and keeping that guiding light through space, basically. But this great rift has caused a disruption and you're cut off. So your characters, if they worship the Emperor, we're going to make Imperial characters. If they worship the Emperor, if they feel like they have this connection, I know Chris definitely being a Space Marine will, you probably feel isolated, alone, completely cut off from your father figure. So it's going to be a traumatizing time for anyone in this party. So that's our basic storyline. I'm using this book called Redacted Records. If you haven't gotten it, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is like the coolest book I think I got. It was basically a whole bunch of like storylines, tables, ways to make your own Space Hulk adventure. So I'm using it, and it's going to be a blast. So this is what we're going to be. This is kind of the framework that I'm thinking of here. So let's talk about you. Let's have you all talk now. Let's talk about your character concepts. We'll start with Chris because you have, I think, the most defined one, and then everybody else can start thinking about it. And then once we get the concepts, we'll start throwing numbers onto everything.
All right, so I was born for this game, and I am playing a Blood Angel tactical marine. My character is actually a tactical sergeant, which for his only fluffy purposes, it means nothing as far as the game mechanics. But so yeah, I've already got him pretty much planned out and ready to go.
So give me a little bit of an idea of your. You said something about how you might have been one of the last remnants of a squad.
So his background, the Tyranids, the alien race, they look like aliens from the movie Aliens. They attacked the Blood Angels' home sector, and with overwhelming force. And the early days of the battle were just devastating for the Blood Angels. They lost a lot of troops. So early in this engagement, this tactical squad was sent in, and the sergeant lost the whole squad, nine men, and the Blood Angels have this trait where they fall into something called the Black Rage, which it's echoes of 10,000 years prior, or 10,000? Yeah, years prior, the Great Heresy, where Horus killed Sanguinius, which was the master of the Blood Angels. So, like, his death echoes through generations of Blood Angels in their genetic makeup. So, anyway, Blood Angels, when pushed to a point, will fall into this echoing mind space called the Black Rage, and it's unrecoverable. At that point, all they can do is die in combat. So my character was starting to slip, and he was sent away as a means of atoning to try to recover himself. And then here comes the Great Rift, which has left him kind of stuck in the Gilead system, trying to complete this quest he was sent on of atonement to regain his honor.
Yeah, so you had a absolutely awesome idea for this character. I loved it when you sent me the concept. I was like, this is so perfect, because I mean, you know, Space Hulks sometimes can be gone for a long, long time. They might have relics of the past on them. Who knows? So this kind of really ties.
Yeah, he's searching for a lost Blood Angels relic called the Blood Fist.
There we go.
And you know, so I had to think about a way of getting a Blood Angel away from the Blood Angels, because you know, they work in squads. There's no lone operatives. So you know, I think that this was the best solution for that.
I love it. It fits perfectly in with this, with the theme, with the setting. It's going to be great. And for Dasha, of course, I know Dasha knows. For the audience, I mean, there's a quote that the Emperor has in the book about Space Marines. I think this really tells you everything you need to know about how, like I said, how serious, how like everything about them is discipline, and they take their job. This is the Emperor. They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, in the furnace of war forge them. They will be of iron will and steely muscle. In great armor I shall clad them. With the mightiest guns they will be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness will blight them. They will have tactics, strategies, and machines such that no foe can best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear.
Yes.
I mean, I got goosebumps. I don't know.
I got goosebumps.
So they take their job very seriously. Okay.
It's a bit much.
It's
to
the extreme.
Yeah. So my character he'll be a battle a battle machine for sure, but he's not skilled in the ways of policy and diplomacy and all the other skills that he needs the party for, and he knows this. So he is surrounding himself with people that can help him complete his mission.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said, your patron, we'll have to decide who that is, whether it's some sort of inquisitor-like person who they kind of operate outside of the rules and regulations of the Imperium anyway. This could be possible. I was thinking maybe a rogue trader, someone who's got you together, banded you together because they need to recover this relic for their own personal needs or whatever it might be, or whatever the situation is. We could talk about who your patron will be later, but I think that's a perfect start to our group here. Now, Andrew, you had an idea for a character. I know it wasn't maybe as fleshed out as Chris's, but what are you thinking of going with?
So I'm going to be playing Commissar Pentabrace as my name. So
ooh, you got a name already, huh?
I've been fleshing it out in the last 30 minutes, and I think I'm pretty versed in this. So he was an orphan of high-ranking Imperial officials and his parents were died in a tragic explosion. So he went into the school of Prognium, which is where Imperial Orphans go, and here they're siphoned off to various roles. You can become all kinds of different things. But he did well, and he had a talent for leadership. So he was sent to the Officio Prefectus, where they kind of take these young 13, 14-year-old kids, and they turn them into political officers. So the Imperial Guard is basically the human army. Each world has to raise a tithe of armed men to come and fight to defend other worlds. It's basically like a big immune system. If a world gets attacked, it sends out a psychic signal, and the worlds around it have to supply troops to defend that world. And the longer the signal is, the more and more troops come in, and they kind of meat grind the way. But these troops need to be led, and sometimes the local officers, like it might be a feral world, it might be a world that's reverted back to barbarism. It might be a world of questionable dedication to the Emperor, or it just might be a regular one. They're going to face horrible things. So they have these political officers, which aren't from the world, assigned to them to make sure that they do their duty to the Emperor. And if they don't, they'll execute them. Or if they're a bit cowardly, they'll execute them. Or if they're a psyker and they're worried his head's going to explode and he's going to turn into a demon from hell, they'll execute him as well. So this is kind of what I do.
Okay.
So I was first attached to the Carrack 23rd. We put down a cultist incursion, but due to high losses, then we emerged with the Panadian First, which are involved in an Orc invasion. And then due to heavy losses, we emerged with the Atenian 16th. And the Atenian 16th, after they put down the Orc incursion, was shipped out to this sector by accident.
The Gilead.
Ministorum official put the wrong coordinates into a piece of paper, and we were supposed to defend people who were about to be eaten by Tyranids, but instead all of us in our craft were shipped out here. And they've been assigned to garrison duty, but I'm kind of too experienced just to...
Right.
I want to serve the Emperor, so I've been pulled into whatever's going on.
That makes perfect sense. So you were here by a mistake, or maybe by fate. Maybe by fate.
The Emperor's will.
The Emperor. That's it. The Emperor's will. Excellent. I love it. All right. So Commissar of the Imperial Guard. It's a very high-ranking official in the Imperial Guard. Someone who would have lots of experience, skill, but maybe even augmentation. There are some famous commissars, like my favorite commissar of all time, Ibram Gaunt. And also, you have Commissar Yarrick, who's
Surely Commissar Yarrick.
Yeah.
Hero of Hades Hive.
Yeah, yeah. So you're one of the Imperium's finest. Let's go to Dasha, because I think you had also a concept, or at least an idea of your archetype that you were going to go with. That's what they call classes in the game, basically, an archetype. Dasha, tell us about your Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, so I was thinking of being a Sister of Battle. I've come up with a bit of a backstory based on what I've read, but please correct me or redirect me if any of this seems out of the realm of like what would be happening in this world.
I'm sure it's going to be fine.
I hope so. From what I gather, Sisters of Battle are also recruited out of kind of orphan groups.
Wrong.
No, wait.
Oh, God.
Wrong.
Bye.
God.
I'm leaving.
Did you do your research?
I'm giving up. No.
Wrong.
But I'm imagining that perhaps she is such an orphan of war. Maybe she even saw her family get like horrifically, brutally murdered by some sort of forces of chaos.
That's a good start.
But then at the last moment, she was saved by maybe a Sister of Battle or a group of Sisters of Battle. And so from a young age, she idolized them, fully bought into this idea. They took her in. She kind of ardently trained throughout her youth to become one of these sisters, and then she became kind of made it her life goal to continue to recruit orphans like her that had been orphaned by these horrific wars. And she takes that job very seriously. Whenever she goes into a battle situation and there's like kids left behind, she will scoop them up if they're girls and take them to one of the temples, I suppose, or shrines to be trained as a Sister of Battle. But I'm imagining that as this rift has happened and they have been disconnected in the Gilead system from their emperor, from like the source, from their god, I think this has probably made her even more fanatical and kind of trying to compensate for
Yeah.
that absence of connection. She's like maybe even going too hard on trying to find girls to like bring into this.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, it's all about the like this idea of like faith for them and the emperor. They're part of what's called the Adepta Sororitas, and they are a section of the Ministorum, the religious, basically cult, so to speak. And it's all about faith for them. Even in their tabletop version, right, when you play in the real game, they have faith dice, they have miracle dice, I should say, and things that could happen on the battlefield that are just like the Emperor's will, right? It just kind of benefits them, and they're literally called miracles. So that's the way that they kind of the theme of that army would be. And you can see here, there's a list of factions, because the factions do give you some certain benefits in the game, some restrictions as well, like maybe restrictions on your skills or attributes. That's something that's part of the game. So we'll talk about that later. But, so far we're representing the Astra Militarum. We've got the Adeptus Sororitas, and of course the Space Marines being the Adeptus Astartes. So we go to Joey now. Oh, no, one question, Dasha. Do you have a name yet? Because I think Annie might be a possible option with your story.
Sure.
Orphan Annie. Orphan
That works for
Annie.
me.
Jesus.
Can I give one fact about the?
I was like, "Where's the pun? Like, where? What do you mean, Annie? Like, there's got to be a twist."
The only sister of battle with red hair. No, actually, I think there are a couple. But go ahead, Andrew. Give us your fun fact.
The fun fact about the Adeptus Sororitas is the Ministerium aren't allowed to have men-at-arms because of the Vanguard schism or something. I forget the exact name, where one of them tried to take over the Imperium and cause lots of bloody holy wars.
Oh,
So they got around this by having women at arms.
There you go. Yes, there is a part in here, like even in the rulebook, it talks about gender, because like when you're making a D&D character, that's up to you to pick. But it's Space Marines and Adeptus Sororitas; they have to be male and then female, vice, the former and the latter, whatever. So it has to be.
Unless you model them differently.
Like in the game, yeah. Well, if you model it,
Yeah.
then it's good, right? If you model it, then it's the way it is. But
I
yeah,
have a
so they.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could perhaps, I think Andrew mentioned that you also were in charge of getting orphans to
I was an orphan.
be trained
yeah.
into political positions? Or you were an orphan. Are you now currently involved in gathering
Yeah.
more orphans for that
The
purpose?
Scholar Progenium is where they take a lot of the high-ranking orphans and train them for various positions.
Yeah.
Stormtroopers, commissars,
So maybe we have a
inquisitors.
working relationship
I
where
was literally
you
thinking
give me
the
the
same
girls and I give you the boys. As horrible as it sounds, but like,
I mean, perhaps, but I would be more likely to give them a las gun and send them forward to meet the enemy.
maybe we have a bad working
thing. The same
relationship.
thing.
He's
Maybe
more
we all
likely to
have-
lead. He's more likely to lead
And
kids
girls
to their
can,
death.
girls
Yeah.
can hold a las gun just as well as the
I
boys.
think I'd rather be a sister of battle than like an Imperial Guardsman. Like if
course.
I had to be recruited into the Imperium. Like,
Well, you wouldn't
I
have a
think-
choice though. You couldn't be
No,
a
I
So
sister.
wouldn't
maybe
have
my character and Andrew's character show up at the same location, and I'm like, I'm taking these young ladies to be trained to be sisters of battle for our Lord and Savior the Emperor, and you're like, no, I'm taking them to, maybe we just constantly are like
Oh, yeah.
meeting
Who are
on
they
these
gonna go with?
battlefields and
Yeah.
butting heads.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
would
could
not
do
go with Andrew's character.
I know.
I would not.
No, but
yeah.
I kind of like the idea that they're both on a recruiting mission.
Yeah. You two definitely probably would look for people to recruit, especially being in the system, which is kind of you're taken so far away from your orders. Yeah. So that's great. So right now we've got a sister of battle, we got a commissar, and we got a space marine. Now Joey, you're the wild card here, as per usual. Joey was like a week ago. He's like, "Hey, Bob." He's like, "Can I be an orc?" And I was like, "No,
It's not being an orc, is it?
no,
No.
He's
I'm
not being an
I-
orc."
I am being a desperado.
Okay,
Alright.
tell me
it's
what.
going to be a desperado. We need a non like crazy religious person to like
Yes.
keep us all sane.
Yes.
And here I am, your atheist.
Amazing.
This
You're
is
an
great.
atheist in this crazy world. Yeah, no, I grew up in a hive city. Came from the bottom, risen to the top. I've seen the depths of the moral persecution of the emperor and his ecclesiastic cult. I'm like, hell no, this I've only got this one life to live. I ain't sacrificing it for no corpse.
Be careful, heretic.
You heretic.
But I have my own faith in the Emperor. However, I just don't believe that the Ecclesiastes truly speaks on behalf of the Emperor's word. I have found my own way.
So a desperado is basically you're just a human.
I'm basically a bounty hunter.
You're basically a human who just kind of hunts people down and does whatever they want. You're technically scum is like your affiliation.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know much about like even regular 40K players, I feel like might not know this, but basically the way that you live in this world is basically you live in, well, I guess you could live on any home world, but there are worlds called hive worlds that are basically like, I feel like it's like a slum that is the whole world, and the buildings go up like miles into the sky. So it's the whole world is dedicated
miles
to
into the dirt. Like the whole world just
that's
gets
true.
replaced
It could
with, like, metal.
yeah. The dirt as well. You've been to the ground, high into the sky, and they're basically just slums. It's like Judge Dredd, but on steroids, if you can imagine that. So the population, so the main planet, the home planet of the Gilead system is Gilead Primus. I'm looking at it. Basically, it has 16 billion inhabitants, and it's crazy. And the rich, the wealthy, elite people, they don't even live on the planet. They live on one of the moons. They never, it says in the book, they never even touch foot on the planet they rule over. So this tells you a little about like what it is to be a human. You are literally nothing.
You're an
scum.
ant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scum is what they call everybody. That's not important. And that's almost everybody. 99.9% of the population. So, okay. So Desperado. I'm surprised you went with this, Joey.
Well,
What drove you to this? Just you just wanted to be something different.
I wanted to be something different. What I love about role-playing games is when I'm just a dude with their wits and like nothing else. Like, give me a sword and then just let me try and figure out the situation from there.
Okay.
So I
yeah.
kind of like being like a human in this world, like where it's just like, okay, I am so outmatched, so outclassed. I am a tiny, insignificant little bug.
You are the scum.
Yeah, scum of the earth.
To be fair, though, Dasha and Andrew are also human,
Yeah.
but they're cooler humans.
They're humans. They're humans with resources.
Yes, they're humans with resources and official training.
Yeah, and my character grew up in like the most impoverished
Hive world, or
areas of
you gonna go with the hive world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Escaped from a hive world. Found some way to live, to make a living outside of the typical imperial sphere of influence.
Okay.
You know, still avoiding, you know, the law here and there. But for the most part, just trying to find happiness wherever I can in this terrible world.
Fair enough. I like it, and actually, it might make more sense if maybe the patron that you all encounter is a rogue trader, then, because they might hire someone of your skills because they know how good you are at maybe getting in and out of a situation, tracking something down. Yeah, so maybe that would be the case. How it's all brought together. A rogue trader. There's examples in the book that I was just showing you before, Redacted Records. So I'll think about exactly who your patron would be, but I'm leaning towards a rogue trader at this point instead of like some other religious, or because your character might be the odd one out there. But I think this could work. There's tie-ins. I mean, Chris would definitely be in because he's looking for relics. Andrew would be going in because you're looking to recover. This is an Imperial ship, so you might want to see what's on it.
A purpose.
Have a purpose, and Dasha for sure. Anything with the Emperor involved, of course, make sense. So okay, so we'll think about that more. But I think we've got our framework here, and that's the first step. So now, once we've gotten our framework, we got to start to look at the character creation process, because basically what you're going to do now that you kind of know what your goal is, what your roles are, you're going to start spending experience points. There's no rolling for anything here. It's not like D&D or something where you're going to roll attributes, get lucky. Basically, because you're tier 3, you're starting with what's called 300 experience points. And all that really means it's the points you have for character creation. So you have 300 points to spend. Trust me, it goes quick. I would also suggest that you have a piece of paper next to you, a calculator. Open up the calculator on your laptop or your phone. You are going to need this, all right? Because I feel like without tracking as you go, it can be kind of confusing. So, like we said, we are in Tier 3, which is, you're going to be facing pretty big threats here. Some of the examples that they give here in the rulebook would be Chaos Space Marines, Greater Demons, Eldari Psychers,
Oh my God.
Gene Stealer Cults. It's like the bad of the bad, right? It doesn't get much worse, except for the next tier. Then we go to the archetypes here. You're going to be picking an archetype that's also going to have some limitations. So when you go through and you start to think about where you're spending points, you might have to look at your archetype. Space Marine, you also have a race, you're humans, most of you. Chris, you're Adeptus Astartes. They're going to give you like a starting point that's a little different than the rest of the characters. But yeah, so anyway, so you've got your archetypes. Now you're going to go on and you're going to spend your points. So the attributes are here. It's on page for you at home and for you at home there. It's 24. The attribute costs. Now, the attributes are limiting for some people. Like humans cannot go above an 8 for their attributes. However, Chris, you're an Adeptus Astartes, so you can go to a 10. I'd also ask if the couple of you at home, when you're going back and forth, if you can maybe even flag one of the pages for your archetype. It actually has all the information there for you, like where you start. So I'm going to show you an example of that here. But let's go to the Space Marine, because I feel like that's a good one to start at because it's very different. So a tactical Space Marine. So Chris, like for instance, actually this is not right. This is confusing. It might be bad. Maybe I'm wrong here.
Desperado, maybe.
Yeah, do Desperado here. This is what I was looking for. So the Desperado, it basically to get you to where these are like an example of your skills. So like this guy with a skill of awareness 2, cunning 2, investigation 2, all this stuff, attributes, agility, whatever, all these things increased. It gives a baseline of 52. This is like an idea, an example of how much it would cost to get this starting point. You don't have to do this. You don't have to choose this. You can pick and, obviously I kind of want you to pick and choose what you want. But basically, if you look at the attributes here, it'll tell you I just lost it now, where to go. Character, actions. But there's a chart on page 24 that kind of tells you exactly how much each one costs. And here we are, adding detail, knowing your faction, finish. Did I make a mistake? No, it was past the archetypes. Yes, okay. It's right here on page 24. So, if you want to have a 6 in an attribute, it costs 55 points. There are 7 attributes, and I'll show you here on the character sheet. Strength is S, toughness is T, A is agility. I forget actually. Initiative, agility, initiative, willpower, intellect, and fellowship. These kind of model like D&D, other RPGs, but there's 7 of them. So you got to spend points to get to 7 of them. And that can be kind of difficult. Like I said, no attribute can be 8, over 8 for a human, over 10 for a Space Marine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you start to pick out those attributes. Don't want to spend all your points on attributes because you're going to have to spend points on skills. You'll have to spend points on features or talents, excuse me. Yes, they're basically like feats in D&D. They're like little things that give you extra bonuses. Joe, you're tier 3. Andrew, you're tier 3. Chris, you're tier 3. Dashi would be tier 2. So for you, you'd have a little bit more to spend because your actual requirements of your faction are a little less than theirs. All right. So why don't you start doing that, and I'll start to go over some of the other ideas while you start to plug away.
I have one question.
Yeah.
On the archetypes, there's like a price, but it only lists 2 of the attributes. So then you have to go and buy all the other attributes.
No. So what that means is that every archetype, like your class, it costs a certain amount of your experience points to be that. For Chris, for instance, and I'm just going to bring up the chart here. For Chris, a Space Marine, the base Space Marine, costs like 160 points. I'll just confirm that right now. But basically, if you're going to be a Space Marine, you have to do that. Adeptus Astartes, just your basic being Adeptus Astartes, costs a certain amount. Includes your stats. Actually, looks like
that 160 points included the attributes and skills as well.
That's listed there. Exactly.
That they're including within that 160 points.
Exactly. So you get a little bit of a deal, actually. You're kind of just better. Your starting point is better. Your agility is 4. Your initiative is 4. Intellect is 3. Strength is 4. Toughness is 4. Willpower is 3. And that's your base starting line. Okay, you also have athletics skills 3, awareness 3, ballistic skill 3, stealth 3, weapon skill 3, and your speed is 7. And that all is just for your total 160 to be an Adeptus Astartes. You see where that says that in the book, Chris?
Yep.
Yep. So basically, if you look in your species, it literally just tells you what the base cost is and all the stuff you get. And that is on page 29. Dasha, I don't know if you were familiar with that. It's page 29.
Trying to figure out.
Yeah. So go to page 29, and I'll put it up on the sheet for everybody to see. So we're on page 29. Is your like species? It tells you what to be that species it costs. All right. For humans, it's 0. Your speed is 6, however, for being a human. Make sense, Dasha?
Yes.
So for you and for Joey and Andrew, being a human costs you nothing. But you don't gain any benefit of being a human. There's no attributes, no skills, no special abilities associated with it. You're you, right? And it even says in the next page, there's no bonus for humans. Every human is gifted the joy of a life in service of the Emperor. Nothing more could be wanted or asked for. To discard this boon for any other, save the immortal vigil of the Astartes, would surely be treachery or madness. So, yeah, humans don't get anything. So when you're doing your attributes, Dasha, and Andrew and Joey, you can just plug away. Pick whatever you'd like. But Chris, you spend 160 points, and you start at all of these numbers. Okay? So you might want to just plug all these in and then increase from there. If you look back up on page, I think it was 23, I said, right? That was where the points costs were. Where are they here? Yeah, page 24. The attribute costs here tell you how much you want if you want to increase it too. So like Chris, if you started at a 4, if you want to increase something to a 5, it costs you 15 extra. So it's a little easier for you to like visualize than being like, all right, where do I start at? What do I subtract? And so for Dasha, Joey, and Andrew, if you want a 4, it's 20 points. All right. So start plugging away. Think about what you might want to put into that attribute. Luckily for us, our character sheets, which are the calculating character sheets, will all automatically update your sheet elsewhere. So if you have some derived attributes like below your athletics and stuff like that, if you put a 4 in strength, it's going to automatically update your athletics ability down below. It's really nice. It's very easy to see, and you won't make any mistakes that way when you add stuff up.
What does it mean when it says bonus below the rating?
I assume that would be for something in-game, an enhancement, a weapon that might give you something better for that, but it's not something that's baked into your original stats.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like D&D equivalent would be like a magical weapon is a +1. It would be something like that, but you kind of put that in after the fact because you don't have that all the time.
Is it okay with you if I just take the suggested attribute, like
absolutely, yeah. So
okay.
That's another thing I was going to suggest too is if you were like, oh man, I'm really lost, you can always go to your archetype. The archetype is like your class, like I had mentioned. So there's a distinction here. I know we just say Space Marine, but like the race or the species is Adeptus Astartes. They're not really humans, right? They've been genetically engineered to be a superhuman, basically. But for everybody else, you're a human. So you might be like choice or option paralysis here. But if you go to your tier, it gives you a sample and how much that would cost you. So I'm just going to go to the first one here, which is let me see if I can find. I'm going to go to yours. Let me just go to Sister of Battle. How's that?
Sure.
Let's go to Sister of Battle. Let's see. Where is my Sister of Battle here? you're called not a hospitaller, that's the lower level one. We want what's it called? Battle Sister? Is something I'm missing here?
I think it's just Sister of Battle. It's page 99.
Page 99?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it. Sage, Ganger, Corsair, Orc Boy, Sanction Seeker, Cult Assassin. I feel like these are the tier 2s. This is where you would be.
It's right under Orc Boy.
Oh, it's under Orc Boy? Okay, here we go. Yep, Sister of Battle, you're right. It's not on the little chapter thing there. Either way, Sister of Battle here, it will cost you to be a Sister of Battle, and the suggested things here, 64 points, all right? 64 points, and you'd start with this like baseline here. You also could then take these, which would be a little different. So this is like adding to that. It would be suggested skills, and that would be a total of 58 and 28 for your attributes and skills together. So 58 and 28 is what, Dasha? Tell me, give me some numbers here. Math.
Sorry, do I pay both 58 and 78 XP?
Yes, exactly. So let me get to. I'm just gonna find the numbers here so I can give it to you. A Sister of Battle would cost you 64 points.
Mm-hmm.
Your archetype would cost you 10, and that's 54. So yeah, so 64 points. That was the number I said before.
Mm-hmm. Plus
64
86.
points. Yeah, and that gives you basically everything that's here. If you wanted to choose the alternate way, which is like their suggested stats, it would be 58 and 28, not 58 and 28 and 64. So this is like your base.
Total.
This is like your baseline, and then this is like what they suggest. So your strength, toughness, all that stuff would be 58, and your suggested skills would be 28. And you just plug into your character sheet these numbers. All right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I sort of just figured it out myself. Yeah, like basically, yeah. If you plug in what attributes it like says you come with and skills and stuff like that, and then essentially plug all that in as like 0, then you can modify the points from there.
Yep. So yeah, exactly.
Both-
Absolutely. Yes, you could do that. You could plug it all in, right? And then you know how many points you have to spend elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you can do it that way. That's a possible option here. So if like Joey, you plug.
But for the most part, I also pretty much just took the suggested stats, even though I didn't. I tried to come up with like my own character, and then I looked. I was like, wait, these are all the suggested stats.
They're the suggested.
Right.
Yeah. They're not bad to start there. That's a good starting point, and then you just increase from there. Because again, Dasha, we're playing tier 3. You'd actually have a little less to spend if we're playing tier 2. But since you're playing with the big guns here, right? You're going to be increasing. You have 100 extra points to throw around. So. Yeah, so you can plug these in. So this is what you're looking at right here, the suggested attributes and suggested skills. You're taking these numbers, these totals, and you're making your character with them. All right?
Great. Yeah, I'm just going to take the suggested ones across the board, which leaves me with 150 points to spend.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then we go to, let's see here. Andrew, do you you're working the stats good?
Yes, I'm using I've put all the things from the character sheet in the base, and now I'm looking at the suggested attributes, and I'm seeing if I want to have it exactly the same for the commissar.
Let's go to the commissar and take a look at what your stats are then. So, yeah, you have a little bit more points invested here if you take the baseline. It's
Right.
106 for just your skills because you are well trained.
Well, it's a bit confusing. If you go up, it says 76 for this base stuff, and that comes with some attributes.
So
But I
this
guess
is
you can
like,
pay-
so here's what it is basically. All this up here, like this XP cost here,
Yeah,
is
it's 76.
Yeah, the 76 here is like basically to get you to a baseline, what you would need, like all your stuff that you get, ballistic skill, the basic stuff, and then they would let you tailor it from there. Or they could suggest, it's like an option here. You can take these instead. So it'd be 159 points.
So it's another 53 for the attributes, right? And then another 106 for the skills.
Interesting.
do
You
it
know,
that way.
I always, when I was doing this, I was just adding the points like manually, so I don't
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, these are suggestions. So I would assume that this is just basically for your character would be your attributes and skills. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this is something you add on top, because I'm thinking about it, right? You have 300 points to spend. This
Yeah.
would put you at 159, and 76 is. Let me see. Let me see if I can find if there's any information on this. And if you know at home, let us know. But I'm
I think
fairly
that's what
certain.
I did too. I added both together.
I'm gonna
the
calculate
basic
it.
cost and then the others.
That looks like it makes sense to me. It's 76 plus 53 plus 106. You get all those abilities.
I think you're right, actually, because I'm looking at like examples of characters, and I think that is how they do it. It's much more costly than just the attributes and skills. Yeah, I think you have to get to your baseline first, and if you wanted to add your baseline to get to like their suggested attributes, you add it all together. Because I think this includes your species bonus, it includes like your minimums, because like the commissar and all of these classes, so to speak, have minimums you have to be at. 'Cause you can't be a commissar that's like, you know nothing about combat, right? You know nothing. You can be a space marine and have a strength of 1. You have to have a baseline first. Then you go on and can add from there. So I think you're right, Andrew. So let's do it that way. Let's just so we can always add more points. It's kind of harder to take away once we make our character. So let's make it 70. Your species bonus, your attribute bonus, and your skill bonus. Add it all together to give you your baseline, and then go from there. I think it's probably the best way to do it. So looking at these, just noticing the two difference while you keep doing it. Making your characters, and noticing that the commissar, because you're much more, you go through, I think, a more rigorous training to become a commissar than like, a guardsman or, even the desperado. It looks like you have leadership, which is huge, right? Like that's going to be big because you're normally commanding fields of, guardsmen.
Yeah, I have no leadership.
Yeah. And like intimidation, 5, you make the guardsmen do what you want. They're more scared of you. Like you have to be more scary than the horrors from the warp that they fight.
Indeed.
So I'm noticing like that's a big difference. Like even the Sister of Battle, Joey's Desperado, no leadership value. You're kind of, I think in theory, you might be the leader of the group. Chris's Blood Angel is definitely probably, because of his.
He's kind of a weapon.
He's kind of a
weapon.
Yeah. Exactly. You probably outrank him in a sense.
Well, he would defer to the commissar.
Yeah.
He would take orders from a commissar.
Yeah.
Begrudgingly.
Yeah. I mean, unless the commissar does something that is heresy,
which was impossible. By the way, I just calculated it, and that 53 is like an extra you pay to get to this level.
Yeah, so that's what it is. So this is the baseline cost, the 76, and then the XP cost is their suggestions to add on.
And I'm going to pay that because it's easier.
So your backgrounds also come with bonuses, right?
Yeah, we'll get to the backgrounds. They're kind of like in the end of character creation. It's like in the adding detail part of it. But basically, yeah, you actually roll for some of those. Joe, did you notice that?
Yeah, can I pick mine?
So I could be convinced to pick one, but I would maybe can we pick some and roll some just so we have a little spice in our life?
Well, the thing is, like, I saw like the 3 that were like, oh, this is exactly the character that I want to play.
Really?
I think if he wants to pick them, he has to make a deal with a chaos god.
I'm down.
I could be persuaded. Let's hear
it.
it.
Costly choice, sir.
When we get to backgrounds, you let me know what you were thinking. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So let's touch in with everybody's character so far.
I have mine done.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. What do you got for attributes and skills and stuff like that?
Okay, so we got a 2 in strength, a 3 in toughness, 5 in agility, a 4 in initiative, 2 in will, a 4 in intelligence, and a 5 in fellowship.
Those are pretty high stats, I'll be honest, for a human. It feels like, because whenever I've seen character sheets for this game, like characters made, it's much lower. But I know it's like tier. Usually, a lot of games.
Actually,
like,
this is the suggested stats, except for the Fellowship. That is one higher than the suggested stats are.
okay. So like, but I meant like in the I've read through quite a few of the adventure modules, and they have character stats. You know what I mean? They have like NPCs and adversaries, and I feel like this is significantly higher than a lot of them. Granted, those adventures, I mentioned to this all of you off camera, but those adventures that I read through, a lot of them are tier 1 and 2. You know, kind of like how D&D, a lot of adventures are geared towards the lower levels, or the first 5 levels of play, not so much 20th level, you know? I think that's kind of the way it goes. And so I've been seeing stat blocks of adversaries, and your stats are pretty high.
Well, I mean, I also have a ton of points to spend. My character's only 52 points base.
Okay, so you probably get a lot of feat. What is it called? Traits.
Skills,
Yeah,
talents.
I took 3 traits. I took Gallows Humor, Eliminator, and Deadshot. Deadshot's like, I guess, like some sort of sniper, like aiming ability. Eliminator's like a sneak attack, and Gallows Humor is like some kind of stress, like thing.
Okay, so
Where,
yeah, so
I have to tell
basically
a joke, a body joke, or a dark joke.
you have to.
That's what it says. I have to, my
Like
character says some kind of morbid joke
at the most inopportune time, I'm sure. Yeah,
and everyone feels better.
that's funny. I mean,
I think
hey,
it
look,
plays in with like shock mechanics.
yes. So we'll talk more about combat at some point. But combat, basically, when you get damaged, it's possible to not actually take wounds. You can take shock because it didn't like actually connect. It's like it just hit your
helmet
target
blew
number.
off and you're like, oh my god, I could have died.
Yeah, think Saving Private Ryan, like opening scene, right? Like the bomb goes off and it's like you're numb to everything around you. When you get shocked, you only get to do like one action instead of like your full complement of things that you can do. So that's a possibility. And then anything else we should know about your character's stats? You said you took a bunch of skills, right? What were the skills? Do you increased Fellowship? I'm sorry, that's not a skill. That's an attribute of skills. What were some of the skills you took?
I took so should I say my totals or
Just anything of note that is a standout.
so I've got a 9 stealth and 9 ballistic skill.
One thing I should probably say, actually, I'm glad you brought this up, is that ballistic skill and weapon skill are kind of important. I think for Chris and Andrew and Joey, it might be pretty obvious what they are, but Dasha, basically, that's how you attack. If you use a ranged weapon, it's ballistic skill. If you use a melee weapon, it is weapon skill. So those should be considered when you're making your character. That's everything for attacks. You're fortunate enough to be gifted a bolt gun. Okay, a bolt gun is one of the more awesome and iconic weapons in 40K. It's basically this giant machine gun. It shoots out massive shells.
Bullets that are like this big.
Yeah,
They're not bullets, they're mass reactive shells.
yeah, they explode.
Which explode.
Yeah. So when they hit something, they explode, and they're iconic to Warhammer. One of the coolest weapons in the game, for sure. It's a shame they don't do that much on the tabletop, but in the lore, they are unstoppable weapons of the Emperor's might.
Yeah.
So it says I can take any projectile weapon.
Yeah, so we'll talk about weapons, and I think actually what I want to do is when we're off stream, we kind of pick our equipment, because you get a set amount of equipment that's in your stat block, in your class, your archetype. I keep using D&D terms, I apologize, but it's basically your class, your archetype. There's like suggested things and things that you just get. They're like, here, you have these to start. And you'll just note them down. There's in the rulebook, there all the information for the weapons and stuff are there. We'll mark those down, I think, off camera, because it's not really that interesting. But the bolt gun is iconic. Chris, you might end up choosing a chain sword, which is basically a chainsaw built into like a sword. It's awesome. Andrew, you might end up having something similar, or a power sword or something like that. And Joey, I don't know what ranged weapon you're going to choose, but
I picked a needle rifle.
Okay, there's plasma pistols, there's like
So it says
flamers,
I can't take a plasma pistol.
and Joey chooses the needle pistol.
It doesn't give me a plasma pistol. Like
It's a sniper pistol.
So I'm only able to look at. So what says projectile weapon?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah,
You're right,
like,
because a
I
flamethrower
have
is not
to-
really. Yeah.
So
So-
I was thinking about taking a plasma pistol. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
I'm
So
sure
just-
Andrew
just-
can.
So now we've done skills, and how do you know what weapons you can take?
So we'll
It
talk about
tells
it.
you.
We'll talk about it in just a second. But war
Okay,
gear is
okay.
in your archetype. You can look at it. It says war gear. It tells you what you get.
Yeah, I got a bolt pistol and a chainsaw.
There you go. Yeah, and I'm also happy to like modify these. I think the whole point of the weapons is that you can take whatever your character would probably have. Like in 40k, there's some things that you just wouldn't get. Like Space Marine would not be using a las pistol. Just doesn't happen, right? Like we kind of know, generally speaking, what they get. So if you have a idea for something different, we can switch it out. Chris, you had a question?
Well, I was looking at Joey. I mentioned he has a 9 ballistic skill, and I'm looking at the costs here.
He cannot.
So to get a 9, that costs 145 points. Did you see that, Joe?
So my sorry, that was my total.
Yeah.
So I have a 5 in agility,
Oh.
and I put 4 points into.
So he
ballistic skill.
can, yeah. So he can do that actually, because basically what that means is that his ability can't go above 8, his attribute or whatever it's called. But his skill and his attribute get combined to make your dice pool.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. So his skill. Okay.
Yeah, so he has a 4, whatever it is in the skill, and a 5 in the other, and when you
Understood.
combine them, that's how you get your dice pool. But his attributes, just like strength
Yeah.
or whatever, that can't go higher.
My ballistic skill is 10.
Nice.
Look at
Feels
him
good
like
for a
that here.
Space Marine to be a 10, I feel like, yeah.
Mine
I'm
is
such a
5.
10.
I've got mine's going to be bigger. I'm going to give myself some points on.
and let's check in with you then, Chris. So you're ballistic skill 10. What do you think, and what are your stats? Like any standouts, things that we should know?
Well, I just took the what they told me to take to be a tactical marine. 277 points gives me a very good marine stat line. Very good at everything. Not outstanding at anything, but good at everything, which is
Yeah.
par for the course for being a space marine. Good at everything, and that only left me with 23 points to buy talents and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of rework because I had wanted to buy several talents. I could only afford one, so I'm taking the dual wield talent
Ooh.
because sergeants typically have a pistol and a melee weapon as their rank distinction. So he will be carrying. I'm going to trade his bolter for a melee weapon instead.
Perfect. And for those who don't know, Dasha, and I'm sure you know this, but for those who don't know, Space Marines, oftentimes the sergeant of a squad will not wear their helmet. It's like a weird thing. I don't know why. When I made my Space Marines, I actually made sure all my sergeants wore their damn helmet, but in the game, none of them wear helmets. It's like you
All
can
of my
easily...
sergeants wear helmets.
Yeah. You can easily identify who the sergeant is, like in the game. Like it kind of is nice to be like, oh, that's your sergeant because he's not wearing a helmet. Yeah. So, Chris, you'll be a helmet wielding sergeant.
He'll be wearing his helmet for
Helmet
sure.
donning. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Well, I hope it's a red helmet.
Oh, yeah, because you're a tactical marine. It's got to be red, right? But
Of
they're all
course,
red.
But he's not. He doesn't follow the.
Wait, no,
the
that's an
codex.
Ultramarines thing. Sorry, this is nerd
Oh,
talk.
you're right. Oh, so
we gotta stop. We gotta stop.
He's a,
He's a Blood Angel.
non-codex compliant chap.
A Blood Angel's tactical marine would have a red helmet.
And
Oh, they
yeah,
do?
it's a red helmet either way.
I paint my helmets white, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, I play the Space Marine chapter called the Ultramarines, and they are the ones that follow they have like their art of war. Basically, they're like way to fight. It's called the oh my gosh, what did you just say? The Codex. It's the
Codex Astartes.
Yeah, the Codex Astartes. It's their rule book created for them, right? That's like the rules of combat, how they fight it. And the Ultramarines are the ones that follow everything specific to the letter. Other factions, other chapters kind of have their own twist, so to speak, on it.
Yeah.
So I apologize. They don't always have to be red helmets.
Blood Angels, tactical marines are. But so I'm 3 points short of 300. So I have 3 in the bank because there's nothing that. Well, I suppose I could spend them on like intimidation.
Yeah, if there's like a
Yeah.
low skill to get like 1 point in it, is only like 2 points, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put a point into intimidation.
So I have 59 points left. What do I spend it on?
So
Is there
you
more
probably-
stuff to buy?
Yeah, well, let's go to features, and Dasha, then we'll check in with your character. But features are basically feats. Sorry, he's saying features. Jeez, they are called talents. Thank you, Joey. You've reminded me a couple times now. Talents. And they're basically feats like D&D where you can pick something and it kind of gives you a little, you can break the rules a little bit. It gives you an extra bonus to do something special in the game. And my suggestion would be if you're going to pick some of these, go with something that sounds like what your character would do rather than try to like pick something that's going to be like the most optimal, because we don't know what the most optimal thing is. Chapter 6 is all about talents. It tells you how much XP they cost, tells you what they do, if there's any requirements or prerequisites for it. Like for instance, there's this berserker one. It costs you 20. It gives you this effect of, basically whenever you see an individual within 30 meters and you suffer a critical hit, or the bleeding condition, you gain a point of wrath. We'll talk about that at the end. But basically, these are things that give you little bonuses, and they have certain costs. Most of them are 20, I've noticed. I don't know if there's expensive. Yeah, there's more expensive ones, but whatever it is, you pick the ones you like, and kind of fills out your character. So Andrew, we touched on you. Joey, we touched on you. Chris, and now we go to Dasha. Tell us a little bit about this Sister of Battle.
I totally went with everything they just suggested.
Totally
I didn't want to
fine.
mess with it too much. Let's see if I get these attributes right. Strength is 3, toughness is 4, agility is 4. What is the I? Is that initiative?
That's initiative.
Initiative is 4. Is it willpower?
Mm-hmm.
Is 4. Intelligence is 2, and fellowship is 2.
Good. It's intellect, but I'll let it pass.
Intellect,
Go ahead. Yeah.
Whatever it is. And then I also did whatever their suggested skills were. Do you want the totals of my skills that were combined with like whatever the attribute gave them, or
no? I would just say tell me some of the standouts. So now you don't have to go through your list of skills, but like now that you've got your attributes and skills, there's something that you see that your character's probably particularly good at, like the total at the end.
Yeah, my highest are my ballistic skill and weapon skills, which are 7s.
Okay, that's solid.
And
Yeah.
I have a 5 in athletics and in leadership as well.
Okay.
Everything else is a lot of 4s, 2s.
Yeah, but that's actually fine. I think they even give you in the earlier in there's like what your character should kind of be like, and I think at even tier 3, with a base character at tier 3, not like an upgraded one like yours, a lot of the base stuff is like a 5. So if you're kind of around a 5, averaging out, you're pretty good. Think about it, right? Like the whole mechanic is you're going to be rolling dice, a pool of them. So whatever number you got there, let's say your weapon skill or ballistic skill was 7, you're rolling 7 dice. Every 4, 5, and 6 is a success. 6s are 2. And if something is relatively, I think a DC 10 equivalent in D&D is like target number of 3. You need 3 successes. And you got 7 dice. Even just a 50-50 straight up, you have a good chance of succeeding. So you probably will regularly succeed at things you're supposed to succeed at. And that's kind of the way it works. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we get into like some more rules of combat and stuff like that is your derived attributes. The character sheet does this for you, so you didn't have to do this. But there are some things here that are derived attributes, things that you would basically not need to really spell out here. Let me go to... I'm going to bring up the... I'm going to bring it up here on the... whatchamacallit? Roll20. Not Roll20. The view. Switch it over here. So there are some other things here, like your defense and wounds and things like that. There's some things here that you're going to get that are just based on some of the attributes. I put nothing in here, right? Like mine are empty. But if you think about it, you got derived attributes, which are I'm going to read them out to you here. Yeah, so defense, resilience, soak, shock, speed, and wounds. All of these are derived. So basically, these are your combat traits. Like defense is your initiative -1. Resilience is basically whatever target number you have for something, like if your defense or whatever, +1 plus your armor that you're wearing. It basically gives you a damage resistance, like a buffer to the damage you take. Soak is whatever the your toughness value. It transfers your damage into shock. So like you don't always take wounds. If you get hit, you might transfer some of them over and you can still survive from it. Speed is designated by your species. Your wounds is your toughness plus your tier. So, think about it like how many wounds you possibly have. Most of you probably have somewhere, I would assume, between like, I don't know, 7, 8 at most, right? Is that about right? Your wounds? What are your wounds?
I got 5.
How do you
Okay.
measure wounds?
It's your toughness plus your tier. Your tier is
I have
3.
8.
You have 8. Yeah. So one thing you have to do is at the top, just put in your tier. So
Oh,
your
no,
tier
it's
3.
your will plus your tier.
No, wounds is toughness and tier.
Oh, that's your shot.
Should that have auto-populated? the
It should,
wounds?
but you have to put your tier here in the top left.
I did, but it didn't populate.
Oh, okay. Well, if it didn't, it should. But if it didn't, then we'll have to add that. But basically, your tier is 3, and your rank is always 1. 1 is actually kind of like your...
Oh.
I know I mentioned tier is like kind of like a leveling system, but really it's your rank. Like when when you just start off your character, no matter what tier you're at, you're rank 1. I know that doesn't sound like it makes too much sense, but in the game there are some things that say your rank bonus, and like when you gain more experience, you'll gain rank as well. We won't need to really worry about that, but your tier is 3 and your rank is 1.
So it says under wounds, it says equals T plus 2 times
2 times
tier.
tier.
Oh, 2 times your tier.
Yeah.
So mine
Am
would
I
be
making a
8
mistake
then.
here? Maybe my notes here aren't exactly perfect, but it's toughness and tier. So this makes sense. So maybe it's 2 times your tier. So your max would be whatever it says, toughness
So
and 2
ours would be
times your tier.
6 plus our toughness.
Yeah, 6 plus your toughness. So somewhere around, like I said, 8, 9, something like that, I would think. For you, Joey, is that correct?
Yeah, mine's 9.
Yeah,
That's
there we go.
toughness.
So that's it. Yeah, it makes sense. So Chris is going to be even higher. What's your wounds actually then, Chris? It would be
I will. Well, it's 11. Toughness, 11 wounds.
Yeah. So there you go. That kind of gives you a sense of the difference here. Like I said, not every time you get hit, you're going to be taking wounds. It's not like hit points. Some of them will transfer over based on your soak, which is basically how much you can like transfer damage to shock. You also have a damage resistance, which is your resilience, stuff like that. So all this kind of comes into play. It sounds crunchier and harder than it really is. I feel like it's gonna be, after we go through a combat, it will feel more natural and smooth. I've seen live play of this. It doesn't feel like it slows the game down too much once you go through one time. And then also there's mental and social traits. These are also derived attributes. So you have conviction, corruption, resolve, perception, influence, wealth, things like that. And all of these things are going to basically have an effect on your character when certain things happen to them. We'll talk more about mental traits and stuff like that probably off screen because I don't want to run this too long. But ultimately, your character is going to have all these derived attributes from what you just chose. So attributes and skills, they make up basically your dice pools. And then whatever numbers you had in here give you a bunch of benefits and options when you get to combat.
What is tier? Right, if you scroll up a little bit.
So you're playing
just-
a tier 3 character.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yep, you're playing a tier 3 character. So
And we
your
start
tier,
rank 0, right? Because we haven't earned any experience.
everyone
points.
starts at rank 1.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep, everyone starts at rank 1. As you gain experience, and like we played through adventures, I would at some point be like, all right, everybody, you gain a rank. That's actually more of the level, to be
But
to be
wouldn't we
honest.
be, because you get, for every 40 experience points you have, you get a rank up to a maximum of 3. So shouldn't we all be at max rank 3 since we have 300 experience points?
No, because it's after character creation.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you make your character, and you start at rank 1, and then when you play the game, as you get experience points, you level up the rank. And then when you get to, like you said, when you gain 3 ranks, you then move to the next tier, which is then you advance your character, you get a bunch more experience points to spend, and you make your character a better character. So for Dasha, she's tier 2, but she's advanced because you're all playing a tier 3 game. So Dasha, you're still at tier 3. Okay, you don't have to change that. It's still tier 3, even though your character was tier 1. You ended up just having 100 extra experience points to spend. Starting at a higher rank is actually better than progressing, because you basically kind of bump up there for free, for cheaper, I should say. But anyway, so that's basically character creation. Attributes and skills, they make a dice pool. Those numbers also give you derived stats, things that you'd put down here. Now let's talk a little about some other mechanics that are in the game. First off, there is a mechanic called Wrath and Glory, hence the name of this game. Basically, every time that you when you make a check and you roll the Wrath die with it, if you get a 6, right, that becomes a dice that you can basically becomes a critical hit, gives you some extra stuff, cool stuff that can go along with it, like gaining extra information, improving a quality of something you just did, increasing damage in combat, yada yada, right? Or it could also be you add to your glory. Glory basically is a pool. You can have up to the number of players in your game plus 2. So for us, it's going to be 6 as your max glory. And every time you gain a glory point, you add it to the pool. If you want to spend glory, you take it out of the pool. And glory does a whole bunch of stuff for you. Things like you can make your dice pool increase 1. You can make the severity of a critical hit even better. You can do something really cool called Seize the Initiative, where the initiative in this is actually like the way we did Icewind Dale's initiative, where the characters choose an agent to go, then the enemy goes, and vice versa, go back and forth till everybody's active. Seize Initiative, for 1 glory, you can have 2 people go in order. So like if Joey just went, you guys can spend the initiative to then have Chris go immediately after him. Something like that. That's the way you could spend glory. There's also Wrath. You can gain Wrath points. These are an individual source. Everybody starts with, I believe you start with 2, something like that. You start with a number of these. I forget exactly how many. We'll look it up for next time. But basically, they can do things for you. They can make you re-roll a dice in a test. You can restore shock, a D3 plus 3 shock. You can declare something narrative that happens based on a result. You can spend a Wrath point and be like, this also happens. And I kind of have to go along with it. I mean, it has to be reasonable. We discuss it. We negotiate it. But it's really about a shared narrative point. And then you can also improve certain other rolls with your Wrath. We'll talk more about that when we get into combat in the game. And then there's also one resource called Ruin. It's a resource for me, so I really like this. They did something similar in the Star Trek game with the I forget what they called it in that game, but it was like momentum for you, and it was something else for me. But either way, in this game, I start with 4. I get 1 point for every character. And if you do stuff in the game, I get Ruin. Ruin is basically stuff when you do things in the game, I get Ruin. Something could happen, like if you do something that goes against the Emperor or something like that. If you do something that is really bad. I know it would never happen, Chris, but you never know the temptations of the warp, right? I think there's also an alternative rule that we could use. I would like this idea, but if you, generally speaking, you talk together about using your glory points as a shared resource. If the group doesn't want you to use glory and you want to use it, normally you can't use it. But I think there's a special rule where you can say, well, you can use it, but then I get a Ruin point. So you get some glory and I get some Ruin, and we're all happy, and you can just be totally against the party here. But that's something we can figure out as we go. But basically, Ruin is a special resource for me. It kind of works like the way you use Wrath, where it improves your dice rolls. But what's really cool is that all the bad guys, all the NPCs and the villains, they have special powers on their character stat block that can only be activated by using Ruin. So I can either choose to save up my Ruin so that when you fight the bad guys and you get to the boss, I can use all their legendary actions essentially. Or I could use them as I need them to make things harder for you in the moment. So that's something I'm going to be using, and I'll be looking forward to. You'll have Wrath points for yourself, and you'll have Glory pool for the group. I think I sent you a cheat sheet with that. There's like a list of each one, what it can do. We'll familiarize ourselves with that between now and next week. And then the last thing you would do is your background. So let's talk about the backgrounds, and then we'll kind of close out the stream. Joey, you talked about backgrounds first, so why don't you tell me what you were thinking for your character? And by the way, backgrounds is chapter 6, I believe. No, I lied to you all. It's not 6, that's talents. We're looking at...
Page.
Yeah, you have the page? You had it open?
I had it open a while ago.
Yeah, we'll get to it. It is adding detail. Yeah, that's it. It's adding the details. So it's beyond that.
30.
Page 73 for At least for mine, that's start date 73.
73. Oh, right. Yeah, because it's all
I
based
think it
on
was
your.
in the 70s.
It's all based on your.
Yes, mine's on
who
70.
you choose. Yeah, it's all based on who you choose. So let's go to Joey. Where's yours? 72.
70.
70. Okay, I'm gonna switch over so that the people can see. All right. So tell us about these backgrounds for the scum, Joey.
All right, the scum. So it seems like there's 3 different kinds of origins. There's the downtrodden, which is that every memory you have is painful for you. Life in the Imperium means violence, toxic conditions, and slavery. You've depended a strong willpower to combat this. You'd be born scummy. You've got a natural knack for a dangerous life of scum, barely affected by its daily trials. That, or you must love the life off the Imperial grid. And then there's the fallen. Once a member of an adepta or a noble house, you have fallen from grace, tragedy, betrayal, or some other disgraceful failing. So it seems like these origins all have like their unique place. And so which is kind of odd to me that like you have to roll it, because it sort of feels like
If it doesn't fit with your character, it would mess with your background or your personality or something.
yeah.
So choose it. I'm fine with you choosing it. Which one do you want? Which one
I wanted
suits
the
you?
downtrodden one.
Okay.
Living in a hive world, just trying to get the hell out of there.
Okay. So then that actually does have a mechanical benefit. You gain +1 to your determination if you choose that one, determination. So maybe that's why actually, Dasha, you mentioned how the derived attributes weren't calculated for us. It's because there are some things you have to manually add to it. So maybe that's the reason. But we could be wrong. We'll perfect the character sheets.
Because here, the accomplishment that I wanted was a pit champion. Through wit or brawn, you proved yourself the most proficient fighter in an underground fighter ring, with scars to prove it. You get +1 max wounds.
Okay, so then, so I'm cool with you choosing it, but if you're like, I don't know, we'll roll. Okay, so everybody think about what your backgrounds might be. Yours are on different pages, but it's all right here in this section. So, Joey, you're going with downtrodden, which gives you +1 determination, pit champion, which gives you increased your max wounds, and then a goal.
And my goal was to be a hive topper. Start at the bottom, you'll make it to the top, whatever it takes.
There's a song about that, isn't there, in popular culture nowadays?
Mm-hmm.
There's a song about that. Started from the bottom, now we're here. I know this because I'm very hip to like what the children know, being a lumberjack, of course. Yeah. So you're a hive topper.
Humor.
You started from the bottom, now we are here at the top. Whatever it takes, you're going to find the good life.
Actually, I apologize. I think what I actually wanted was
my God.
Fortune and Forgotten.
Okay. You're sick of the city?
Yeah, you're sick of the city, this planet, even your own name. By amassing riches, you plan to abandon your life and everyone you know in search of something better.
Okay. So that would be increasing your shock because you could handle trauma a little better, I guess.
Yes, because I can like abandon my circumstances more effectively.
Fair enough. Now, the last thing here is just a objective. This is not necessarily like, totally mechanical, but like it's kind of like when you have a background. Sometimes a background might come into play in D&D. If you were a soldier or whatever, you have some sort of thing here. So this is something that you can use. You could pick one or roll. Applying
the one I wanted
crime.
was decry the violence and villainy of authority. That's
going to be tough sitting next to a commissar. But yeah.
I know, which is why I feel like it would be great.
Do it. All right. Awesome. So that's for Joey. Now we're at the Adeptus Astartes next. So Chris, let's talk about yours. You're obviously a Blood Angel, so that picking a Blood Angel forces you to choose a couple things here. Like you get a bonus in combat and for things like melee combat stuff. You probably saw that earlier, but it's right here. Savage Echoes and the Red Thirst. You get these automatically. These are things like this Red Thirst is kind of like a berserker type rage. And then the Savage Echoes increases your... you re-roll double your rank dice when you make a melee attack test. So you can re-roll a bunch of dice when you attack in combat. That's just really straight off the bat awesome.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your background stuff. So you want to pick or roll?
I'm just gonna roll mine. I'll leave it to the Emperor to decide what I have here.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
So the first one,
This is your
here's
origin.
origin. Here's a D3. So I rolled a 6, so that's cunning.
It says you made your way through the aspirant trials by your use of using your experience with the underhanded, relying on wit over brawn. Interesting. It increases your determination by 1. And then we've got
Okay.
your accomplishment.
Where do I don't see where to put that on the character sheet.
I think you have to do that, the determination, just after the fact. I'll show you when we're done here. I want to get
Okay.
through the... Yeah, but
Okay,
you just
here's
mark
the
what
other
you
roll.
got.
The
Yeah.
next one, I got a 2.
So that would be
That's-
Crusader. Ooh.
No, that's the I rolled a 3, so that's the 2 on the
Oh,
D3.
gotcha.
Influence, badge of honor.
It says you risked your immortal life to
I get a-
rescue mortals in peril. You have
Plus one
justly
to
recognized for your
influence.
unasked for selflessness. Wow. So that kind of ties in, right? You were
Yeah,
saving
it
maybe
kind
your,
of ties in with his background I came up with.
and then
here's
your
the other
goal.
A 6 for the last one as well, so that's conviction. Plus
Yep.
1 conviction.
Honor the chapter. You uphold the chapter's valor, quick to extol its virtues, never allowing a slight against your battle brothers to go unanswered. Oh, yes.
All
It's
right.
going to be great. Teamed up with the scum next to you. It's going to be great. The atheist scum.
I watch my mouth.
Yeah.
you better watch your
seriously.
mouth, sir.
That's how I've stayed alive.
Yeah.
I mean, not only do you have a commissar, but you have a blood angel
A
standing next to you.
raging lunatic bloody.
Okay, and here's the D6 for the goal.
Okay, you pick your goal, and I'll find the next one here.
That's
A 2.
that's me.
Apply the wisdom of the Codex Astartes to a situation.
Seems like you'll be doing that.
Yeah, all right, that's cool.
All right, we are at the Astra Militarum, which is the Imperial Guard. That would be you, Andrew. So tell us a little about your origin. Are you going to pick one or roll?
So I'm going to pick one if I have to because of the character I thought about,
Okay.
but I'll roll if I don't. So for the first one where it says origin, I'm Scholar Progenium, so I'm regiment born,
Okay, regiment born. So
which is influence +1.
gotcha. Even though you are not a lifelong Astra Militarum, you were taken into the... Basically, you were taken in the fast track to officerhood.
Right.
So it has to be that way, I guess. You're not a recent recruit, and you weren't
Not
you
no
weren't
choice.
drafted. Yeah. Okay. So then we go to accomplishments.
I'll roll this one. Can somebody roll a dice for me? I didn't bring any dice.
I got you.
There you go.
6.
The
So,
underdog. You're known
Yeah,
for
that's
taking on foes far beyond your fragile human physique. The fires of faith and fury stoke your reputation. +1 influence
Ooh, so I get +2 influence from this so far.
Nice.
so far. And then your goal, a D3. You want to roll it or pick?
I roll it.
Roll it, Joey.
4.
4.
Oh,
Best
this
of
one's
the
very
best.
appropriate. Best of the best.
+1 to your max wounds. Holding the line is not enough. You want to excel at dealing death. Hone your skills to a lethal edge and become an elite warrior of the Astra Militarum.
Yep,
Whew.
we've got to purge the heretic that's in us. The traitor.
And then finally your objectives. D6, Joey?
2.
2. You need to apply a lesson from the Imperial Infantryman's uplifting primer to the current situation. Oh,
I
God.
was going to go for 4.
What's that one?
Cite the
Sight.
logistical use of hatred for the enemy.
Listen, if you want to choose it, go for it. If you
Why
want
not?
to...
Why not do both?
I rolled a 4.
Why not do the whole list?
Yeah.
This
I'm
is...
not even joking. I really did.
I'm also a big fan of the uplifting primer.
Yeah, I mean, quoting books is always great on the battlefield.
Right.
Can't go wrong. All right.
Echo.
You can't go wrong with quoting a book, especially like your doctrine, right? For your whatever your faction is, your regiment. There's the Imperial Guard, Dasha. This is what it looks like for a human in the army. And that would be Andrew right in the back,
Yeah.
right there.
Ready to shoot that officer if he doesn't do it right.
Yeah,
Looks like
commissars.
It looks like a
Commissars.
Soviet propaganda poster.
It is a Soviet propaganda.
Yeah.
Commissars
That commissar
totally
right up front.
right there, Dasha. That's a commissar. They always wear the hat, that special hat, and the trench coat. That's like their thing.
That checks
Okay,
out.
it checks out,
Very-
doesn't it?
Very
Yeah.
Soviet. Very Soviet.
Yep. All right. And then we go to Dasha, your sister of battle. Do you have the page number for yours? Is it
55.
so? It's
No,
much
sorry,
further.
52.
52. Okay, good. All right. So Dasha, the sisters of battle are the Adepta Sororitas. Let's see what your origin is.
I'm going to randomly roll all of these. Joey, could you roll for me as well?
I got you.
Joey's the roller.
2.
Thank you.
2. So is it a? It is a 2 or a? On a D3, it's a 2.
Oh, on a D3?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
So it's a
On
one.
D3.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So you're gonna gain +1 resolve for this one. The holy inspiration. You followed in the footsteps of an imperial saint on a pilgrimage,
Oh.
an interstellar voyage, or a military campaign. Your idol inspired your faith to new heights. This is actually perfect. If it was the interstellar voyage, you came here for following a patron, basically a saint of the Adepta Sororitas. Like I said before, I have Saint Celestine. She's maybe the most famous of the Adeptus Sororitas saints.
Y'all worship her. That works.
Well, you wouldn't have followed her here because she wouldn't be here in the Gilead system. But you can make up your own saint.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So we go to accomplishment. D3, Joey.
Again, a 1.
Defended Enoch. One of Enoch's many prized holy sites came under assault, and you were there to drive off the attackers. Pilgrims on the Shrine World owe you their lives. So you defended your home world with great vigor. Gives you +1 to influence.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, a goal. Ooh, I really like 1 for this adventure. So it's a number 2, or is it?
On a D3, it's a 2.
Okay, so shine the light. The dark closes in. You intend to push it back. Build a monastery. Recruit holy warriors to your righteous cause. This actually works perfectly, doesn't it?
That works. Yeah.
Shine the light. +1 influence again.
Awesome.
And then finally, your objectives. D6, Joey.
All right. 6.
Purge a heretical item or individual with holy flame.
Oh my god. It might be me.
You have to do
Yeah, that might be you. Immediately.
You have to do that. That's something you are dying to do, is purge somebody with holy flame. All right.
Right.
The
Oh
Sisters
my
of Valor are
God.
also, they are actually famous for using flamethrower weapons.
Great.
So if you
Can't wait.
really want to, we could look and see how that could be possible.
Sounds good.
I think you probably, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so that kind of ties the end of the character creation together here. Look, I don't expect you all to be experts on the system right now. We just made characters. I think the best thing to do now is, from now until next time, let's look at the weapons and gear that you get to start, right? Familiarize yourself with what they do. Then we'll look at the weapons. If you feel like in the back there's a weapons section, if you want to pick a different weapon, text me. Let me know. We'll figure it out from now until next week. But really, the goal is I want to focus more on the story. I think that the game is very crunchy when you look at it and make a character. But when you're playing, it's really, really not. It's way more narrative driven. Everything is just a dice pool. And it's the same mechanic for every single thing in the game.
Just
There are
4
ways
ups,
to-
6 would count as 2.
4-ups, 6s count as 2. And the Wrath
Right.
die could be a crit or a critical hit or a critical fail.
Yeah,
and
the only
that's-
complicated part seems to be like, all right, how many dice am I rolling? And then
Yeah.
once you figure that out,
And once you figure out how much dice you're rolling, and the only other thing that I would say to this is that there are some like actions, maneuvers in combat that all affect it. But I gave you that cheat sheet. Look it over. It tells you like what every action does, how it adds or manipulates the dice pool. But really, it's just you're taking a number of dice and counting how many successes you get. And because I think the mechanic is so simple, it makes the storytelling simple. Even though crunching the numbers to make your character was kind of complicated, I think the game plays much more narratively. Do you have any other questions before we sign off here? I love these characters we made. Do we have names for everybody yet?
not yet.
Not
I have a
yet,
name
do
to
you?
brace. Commissar Pentabrace.
Pentabrace. I love it. Chris, did you have one?
Sergeant Ricard.
Ricard. Oh, I love it.
It's a male name from the Renaissance, and the Blood Angels are known for their artistic endeavors, and
Yeah,
they're
they're
very
like Venetians.
Renaissance. So I went with Ricard.
I love it. And Dasha, do we have a name yet for you?
I'm gonna spin off of your Annie suggestion and go with Annabelle.
Oh, Annabelle. Oh, very nice.
That's good.
Nice.
Ooh. Also creepier because of the doll movies. But yeah, it's great.
Sister Annabelle.
Sister Annabelle. You are
Creepy.
basically a
I
nun.
actually really
Yeah.
like that name.
I like it a lot. That's great. They do have I feel like old-timey Catholic names.
Yeah.
So that works. That'll work. Okay, so Joe, you're waiting on your name. No pressure, but if you want to give a hot take right now.
Rogal.
Dargo. No, I'm
Ro-
kidding.
Rogal. Indargo.
Rogal.
Please be Rogal.
What about Lagor?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll find out what Joey's true name is next week, or maybe he'll just be the man with no name. We'll figure it out. He is the wild card of this group, without a doubt. I mean, looking at not just it by the characters, but by the people here. Okay, you are the outlier. Okay,
All right.
I'll keep him in line.
but you're also my cousin, and I love you. So
I love you too.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's going to be great. We have an Imperial Commissar, a Blood Angel, a tactical sergeant Blood Angel. We have a Sister of Battle that's on a quest to save orphans, and we've got a Desperado Scum. Tune in next week when we see how this system actually works, and I'm sure we all will know the rules so perfectly by next week. But we're going to be playing on September 26th, Episode 1. I anticipate this to go 3 sessions. That was my
That's it.
my pull for all of you. I mean, you know me. You know how I can judge things. So maybe it's 4, but I'm hoping that it's right around there. This is a one shot. Like I said, I really over the weekend dived into that Redacted Records book. Links for Cubicle 7. Again, fantastic that they sponsored this. It's really great to get some of the product, so I didn't have to go out and buy all this stuff. But really, really fantastic book. I suggest the Redacted Records. If you like Space Hulks, oh my God, this is it's like being in a toy shop. It really, I feel like there's so much I'm gonna get out of that book. So anyway, everybody have a great week. We'll be back trying to bring the Emperor's Light to another dark place in the galaxy. Until then, though, we'll see you on the tabletop. Have a great night, everybody.